Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another uh, panel. Today, we are discussing what it is very much considered a taboo topic in most social circles. And today, we're here to basically break out and talk about it because it needs to be talked about. It needs to be like we need to be aware of. The resources available to us, what is normal, like what we are experiencing or a loved one is experiencing. So today, once again, we will be talking about death and grief at the same time. Just I guess a warning because I kind of forgot to do it earlier in the other podcast. We are going to be talking about very difficult topics for some people. So if you think this is going to be something that's triggering for you, or a loved one, or like you maybe didn't realize it, but it became a trigger for you, please stop watching the video and seek professional help as soon as you can. We will also have some resources available in the description of this video for anyone who may need them. So just sort of like be aware of that. Um, that being said, I have two lovely mental health professionals here who are going to essentially fill me in because they have a lot more experience on this topic than I have. So, hello, ladies. April, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Sure. Well, I'm honored to be here. My name is April Roller Morris. I've been involved in the mental health field for a little over, well, almost 11 years, working with advocacy and trying to help change lives and save them.
Mhm.
By day, I'm a university case manager at the University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg, Missouri. And when I'm not doing that, I'm raising four boys who are absolutely honoring and wonderful. And our family organization, Cause for Hope, we are an educational mental wellness and suicide prevention nonprofit. We got our start in February 2018, and we've been around ever since. So the boys helped me with a lot that we have at Cause for Hope. Oh, and I'm working on my doctorate in developmental psychology.
So you're saying you have no time to do anything, but okay.
I'm
Well,
very
you know what? Thank you so much for being here because now I know it must have been really difficult, like to carve out some time to be here with us today. So we really appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you.
Shirley?
Hey, I'm Shirley Shani Benfi. I'm an Israeli who lives in Georgia. I'm in private practice. When I don't do that, I volunteer for a suicide prevention hotline. I work primarily with grief. It's my love. When I don't do these two things, I am working towards a PhD in marriage and family therapy because I am a marriage and family therapist. And on my free time, I homeschool my twins who are 13 girls,
So
maternal girls.
so
That
once
leads
again,
to the next question.
thank you so much for being here today as well. You must be really busy. So yes, I know this is a panel that we sort of like been emailing back and forth for a while, and I really wanted it to happen. And there is another panel that we did, same topic. In a different way. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, you can go ahead and check it out on our YouTube channel. But today we can just go ahead and get started. I don't really have any specific questions at this time for you ladies, but I am very interested to learn more about how you sort of became involved in, advocating, speaking out about something that, again, it's very taboo. And even within like mental health professionals, there's still this kind of like hesitation to work with anyone who may be, what we call actively suicidal, or having this, I don't know how to describe it, more like a very difficult time where now they have put suicide as an option for them on the table. So a lot of mental health professionals are kind of like no, sorry, like we can't do that. So finding someone who uh, can provide, a service, a good service for that can be kind of difficult.
Well, Miss Shirley, did you want to go first?
I'll let you do the suicide part.
Okay. So I got involved in the field. It'll be 11 years ago this August. I lost my husband, Jeremy, to suicide. He was raised in a family that pretty much said that doesn't exist in our family.
Mm,
So when he started struggling, because unfortunately Jeremy had what we believe was a schizophrenic break. He's
mm,
began hallucinating things that weren't there, auditory. At one point, he thought that I was an immigrant who was trafficking drugs into the country.
mhm,
He would talk to me. He wouldn't talk to me with his voice. He would mouth things.
mm,
So when I told his family, "Hey, there's something going on. I don't know what it is," because 11 years ago, I didn't know a lot about
mhm,
mental health in general. And I said, I don't know what it is. And the response was, we don't have that in this family. You're the crazy one.
wow.
And he went to a doctor a few days before he passed. And unfortunately, 11 years ago, the doctor didn't even know how to respond. And but instead of putting him in a hospital, gave him medications and said, if it gets worse, call us. And he was gone a few days later. And so uh, I found out via phone call from my in-laws. It was not a very pleasant call. It was there were a lot of curse words involved,
Mm,
telling me about this death. And I was like, "Are you sure?" And they said, "You'll be arrested for trespassing if I came down to, to see him." Um, and at the time, the boys were 5, 3, and 15 months old. Uh, that call came in right before we went to church. So it was early in the morning, and
mhm,
I didn't find out that it was a true call until about 2:30 that afternoon. So there was a lot of, oh no, this wouldn't actually happen. A lot of feared manipulation. Uh, and when that final call came in, it was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. I've got 3 boys. We went from being a cohesive family unit, despite the fact that he had some mental health issues, um, to being a single parent, and it was a very rough transition because I was also starting my sophomore year at the local university. So
mhm,
I had a few choices to make. Mom and dad said, "Hey sis, move home, or you can stay there." I'm Henri. UCM's mascot is a mule, so I chose right when I said, "No, I'm not going to move home. I'm from a tiny little small town with barely over 1,000 people, and the boys would have been the ones who were known for their dad taking his life, and I didn't want
mhm,
do that for them. So being ornery and being stubborn was my benefit. So I chose to stay home and work as hard as I could to try and help save and change lives because we couldn't save Jeremy, but not knowing what suicide was, not knowing much about mental health, I dove headfirst into advocating for others and trying to help save lives in his honor.
mhm.
Yeah, lots. I have a very long story. um,
No, no,
but
thank you for sharing that, because I feel like your story is very much the story of a lot of people, where we're like, well, yeah, I've heard a lot of clients talk about. So my parents come from Mexico, and I love working with Latino population, and a lot of the times it's mental health is not a thing that's discussed, right? And definitely not a thing discussed outside of the family, for sure. So like, if this is why I am so passionate about doing panels like this and providing resources online and on social media where people are like, for sure, I know they're there, because something can happen, and if we don't know what to do, like, who do we reach out to? Like, or like if we ourselves are experiencing that, you know, horrible time in our life where we are considering, putting suicide on the table, like who do we reach out to? Because a lot of people who do voice out, hey, I am considering this, they actually do want help, right? But if no one around is able to help because everyone's like, yes, I don't know what to do, because like honestly that's my revolt. Maybe not as much now, but before I started grad school, definitely. Whenever somebody started crying or saying, disclosing very difficult things to me, I did not know how to respond. Like, what do I say? Why do I even say to this? And I was just kind of like there, like, oh, okay, everything's gonna be okay. And sometimes that's like more harmful than good. So again, this is why it's so necessary for us to be able to speak and talk about these things, right? Shirley, you wanna to share how you became involved with this
Yes,
advocacy work?
two different routes, right? For suicide prevention, it was my mom died by suicide when I was 18, and I never ever said anything else. I
Hmm.
refused to lie about it. I refused to even not say anything.
Hmm.
The words out of my mouth are always the same. And it always struck me how people can't handle a factual thing. It's a fact.
Hmm.
The sun rises and my mom died by suicide. Those are two facts. One of them is easy to handle and the other is not.
Hmm.
So when I came to suicide prevention, it was more because I can. I am able to be there. I'm not afraid of it. I think it shows great respect when someone shares that part of their story with me. It shows that trust me. If you notice behind me, there is a sign saying hope. No one goes to therapy and no one goes on a hotline or chat or tells a friend they're considering suicide if they lost hope for something better.
Hmm.
They won't ask for help. It's as simple as that. If someone's coming to speak with me, they want help.
Hmm.
And suicidality is not the lack of hope, it's the same hope but with a different pathway.
Hmm.
Without fail, if you ask someone, what do you hope after death, they will give you a description of a beautiful life. Without fail. So that's how I got to suicide prevention because I look at this differently. And that doesn't mean that I will encourage them, say, yeah, yeah, sure, go ahead and do it. You'll achieve that. But this is how I know what they actually want.
Hmm.
And grief, well, if you ever grieved, you notice that you say grief and everybody starts scattering around and have something else to do. Mhm.
Hmm.
So again, why am I doing grief work? Because I don't feel the urge to run away. I'm like, okay, we can do this. And because I can, like, I don't get why people climb Kilimanjaro, but they say it's because they can. So the same goes here. Mhm.
Hmm.
I want to go where we're geeks, so I can say that where no woman has gone before, as Star Trek said. True.
I sorry, I do a podcast called Mind Brain Movies with two of my group friends, and they are very much comfortable in what I call the negative emotion, sort of like just sitting there and thinking about grief and pain and all those things. And it is my instinctive reaction to be like, no, thank you. No, no, as far away. And but again, like those are things that we have to feel because I cannot possibly be happy all of the time. Like I have to be able to like process and experience because, life happens and there are situations where I do feel grief or I do feel anger, jealousy, or whatever. And I need to be able to sit with those emotions and process them and manage them because otherwise, horrible things can happen. Like I could say things that I truly don't mean only because I'm so upset about something and I don't even realize it. So like I really appreciate that they kind of force me to sit with them in those negative emotions. But yes, definitely there is a lot of the times it's not because I shared with you both earlier where there was an instance where um in one of my classes, somebody said, "Oh, well, the person who died by suicide or chose suicide, they were a coward," and that's something that is very commonly
Mhm.
thought in some societies, and it's not true. That's not how any of this works. And I have a lot of clients that when I ask, "Hey, have you ever thought about suicide?" It's often always like, "I just don't know what to do with the pain or the depression or like how to handle this problem." So yeah, I thought about it, but more in terms of like, I just want to be able to disappear and not have to feel all of these things, right? Or to have another option. And I think that's a lot of the time something we don't even consider
Mhm.
when someone is talking about, suicide.
Well, and a lot of
Um,
times you have intrusive thoughts. Like people that I talk to who have lost loved ones to suicide, they're like, oh well, their behavior changed. I don't understand. They were so depressed for so long, and then all of a sudden everything was perfect. And people they don't quite understand. Sometimes when a person's behavior changes that rapidly, it can be because that individual has decided to end their lives. And when we're looking at like thoughts in general, like I have never met a person who wakes up and goes, you know what, I want to be depressed today.
mm,
Nobody ever wants to say that because those are intrusive. It's
mhm,
not a person's lifestyle or anything within that realm that's causing those thoughts. And when we start normalizing treatment seeking and saying, hey, it's okay not to be okay, let's figure out a way for you to get the help that you deserve.
mhm.
It changes that whole conversation. I mean, my hat's off to you, Shirley, for doing what you do in grief work because it's not easy at all.
I think what we forget is that we can't live without grief. Grief is not just death, right? Bereavement is death, but grief is any loss. So if
Mhm.
you are over 1 second old, you have already lost something and you have already grieved something. And so trying to avoid grief is like, oh, I'm not going to touch anybody who's alive. How are you going to do the work if you're not going to talk to people who are alive?
Mhm.
And one of the great misconceptions, by the way, talk about taboo is thinking that grief is only death or the 5 stages. Don't get me going about that bullshit. Pardon me
Yes.
to cut out the bullshit word.
It's fine. If people are here to to talk about death and suicide and grief, I think of course we here and there's not a big deal.
And so the way it all is represented in the popular culture, in the not so popular culture, is problematic.
Mhm.
Uh, Grief is supposed to go away after 5 seconds, give or take. And suicide, I think, only became something you discuss on popular culture, what, less than a decade ago.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, you're
Well,
100% right on that, Shirley. 100% right. I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
oh, no, 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 that's okay. I just wanted to ask Shirley because that's one thing I wanted you to discuss because I've heard it quite often. Like, well, you know, so and so passed away so many years ago, so why
Mhm.
am I still feeling sad? And then I'm like, because it never goes away. It just kind of changes a little bit.
So I'm gonna do this.
Yes, yes, that is exactly what I'm waiting for. Please
How
take
Shirley.
the
I'm
take
gonna
the
say,
microphone and
and
talk.
one of the things I love is when people say, and by love I mean hate, people say they're stuck in their grief.
Mm,
Did the person come back to life?
Mhm.
No. Okay. If I live, I thought about this before I came in. The metaphor that came to mind is if I live in a really, really good cold climate, right? If I move to Alaska,
Mhm.
mm,
10 years from now, 20 years from now, do you expect to see me walk in a tank top and shorts? Because it's been 20 years and I should get over this? No? Shocking, right? So the person is still dead. Are you still in the same place? Probably not. Did your life grow and your grief and the place that grief takes in it maybe takes a little less space because your life grew, not your grief shrunk? Sure,
Mhm.
probably. But are you stuck when you're grieving? Absolutely not. Just like if I still wear a coat in Alaska, it's because it's still cold. So what I dislike the most about the stages is that it gives you this idea that you go from step one to step two to step three to step four, and then step five, and it's over. But it's not supposed to be over, because even if it's not that, did you lose something? Yes, you did. Did you get it back? Even if you did, not the same way. Can you go back in time? Not that I know of. So of course you still feel the sadness, the anger, the longing, all of this. Even if you made a choice, but you lost something in that choice, it's okay to still miss it.
Mhm.
Right? Like I chose to move to the United States 12 years ago. Do I still miss having friends that I don't need to calculate the time before I call them? Yes, I do. Do I miss walking the street and hearing my own native tongue? Absolutely. Do I miss the food? Oh, don't get me started. But, right? But do I still make the same choice? Yes, I do. And no one can tell me that I'm not allowed to,
Mhm.
or that I shouldn't. And I can't tell, and who am I to tell anybody that they're not allowed to? Just like I wouldn't come to you and say, April, today you should be sad. And you'll say, okay, and go be sad. I'm not going to say, Elizabeth, today you can't be sad. It
Mhm.
doesn't work this way.
Mhm. Well, but that's kind of like our automatic reaction, like to cope with something that we're not familiar with or we don't want. Immediately, like, no, just stop thinking about it. Like, if I stop thinking about it, it's just gonna go away, right? And that's not how any of it happens. But
Mhm.
I'm going to ask both of you and everybody who listens right now to do something for me. I want you to not think about a purple elephant that can also fly around your room.
not too late.
Yeah,
As soon as
I'm already thinking it.
yeah. One of the one thing that you said that I love is comparing sort of like grief
Mhm.
to like the cold of Alaska. I'm like, because that's kind of like the only way sometimes that we know that we need to consider mental health the same way that we think about physical health,
Right.
right? Because they're connected. They're connected. And like, if you're struggling with one, very, very likely that you're going to struggle with the other as well.
Well, and a lot of times we get involved in this whole move. Oh, my phrase that I can't stand is move on. Oh, that's a way to really get under my skin, because it's like,
Hmm.
no, I'm not moving on. I'm adjusting to the new normal, adjusting to that new normal without him here,
Mhm.
adjusting to the new normal of raising my kids. But Shirley, and I'm sure I share your frustration with the stages, because we are all taught how not to grieve, right?
Yes.
Oh, well, it's essentially like, oh, well, you got a boo-boo, rub some dirt in it, you'll be fine. And that's not accurate. That doesn't help people. But in the United States, we're taught, well, pretty much everywhere, actually, not just the United States, but we're taught to be busy.
Yes.
Oh, like when
Mm.
you've lost a pet, it's, oh, well, just get a new one, or don't think about it, right? Which is surely like gave the perfect point with a purple elephant. Like
Mhm.
that's 100% true. And when it comes to suicide grief in general, it's that, oh, call us if you need us, we'll be here. You call that person, what happens? Oh, they don't answer the phone. And a lot of times, not just in suicide grief, but in grief that's unexpected, it's, well, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but there's so much power with a person just being there. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have to say anything. And a, something that I'm still learning, people are not comfortable with silence.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be silent. It's okay to let someone process what they're going through and feeling. We don't have to fill that void because we are uncomfortable. So it's grief. It's
Well,
not Same.
I think a lot of the times too, what happens is that because we're so uncomfortable, we want to get out of that being uncomfortable. So then we do something, right? And we start saying things like, well, it's been a while. You should stop thinking about it. Or like, hey, like jingle, jingle, here's some keys. Like, try to like distract yourself with something else. But we are, something we have to kind of ask ourselves is, are we doing this because we don't want to be uncomfortable, or are we doing this to try to help the other person?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are two different things.
And April, you stumbled upon two of my most angry making phrases. One is the move on. There is move on with, and there is move on from.
Mm-hmm.
I can't move
Mm,
on from my grief, but I absolutely carry it with me as I move on in life. And those are
mhm,
not the same. But one of the things that people say, call me if you need anything. Whatever you need, I'm here. There are two problems with it. A, not true. Just
Mm-hmm.
not true. I need you to take me back in time. Can you do that? No, you cannot. So whatever you need, already off the table.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is, I am right now very busy grieving, so I don't have time to think about, or resources, mental resources, to think about what I need. Is it something that's okay to ask? Is it
Mm-hmm.
something that okay to ask from you? Are you able to do that? And what
mhm,
time is appropriate for that call? Now you just gave me a whole task list, a to-do list, so that you would feel comfortable. It would be
Mm-hmm.
far more effective if she said, hey, can I bring you dinner tomorrow? That's a yes or no. You spared
Exactly.
me all this work, right? My kids are homeschooled, but can I pick up your kids? I hear picking up kids from school is a thing. Can I pick up your kids from school tomorrow so you don't have to get dressed and get in the car?
Mm-hmm.
Effective.
I really love that you bring this up, and this again, this is why I'm making this, because I was actually gonna say that my to go now response is to say, okay, how can I help,
Right.
right? And I understand that sometimes it's very difficult for people to know what they need. So then in that sense, when they're like, well, I don't know, and then so I can see, hey, well, I can sit with you and we can chill, like I can help you with whatever they're doing, a task or something, like whatever I am sort of like able to provide and give at that moment. But I've never thought about, hey, how can I make your life a little bit easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still asking for like that permission, or like understanding those boundaries, right? Because just like I don't like anybody being near me when I am angry, because I'm just going to say things I don't mean. Like there's other people that they just need some space to themselves, or they would prefer if somebody reach out to them, right? I mean, because we have this weird thing in as humanity, where we're just kind of like, well, shouldn't our loved ones just read our minds? I'm
Well,
like, no, we can't. Like, that is like when anytime I would tell anybody, like, I'm studying psychology or whatever, they're like, oh, can you read my mind? And I'm like, no, I can't. Also, don't want to.
no.
Even if I could, like, I don't want to.
In my own mind.
Sometimes I don't want to read my own mind. Um,
In there.
yeah, but that.
My new favorite is, how can I help right now?
Mm,
Or what do you need right now? So I'm at least closing the time gap between forever, right?
mm-hmm,
And that can be very helpful. What can I do to help right now is far, if you can think about anything to suggest, is far better than call me with whatever, whenever. Because I
mm-hmm,
guarantee if I call you at 2 a.m. and I say, I need you to make me a whole meal right now at 2 a.m., I probably will get a no thank you. I'm guessing it would be a no thanks. Oh, and fly it to me because I'm in Georgia and you're not. So
mm.
get up at 2 a.m., make a meal and bring it to me. No. So what can I do right now is a great question.
And also kind of like be realistic too,
Oh,
right? Like
yeah.
if I'm also going through something and I just don't have the emotional or mental capacity to like be there for someone, like try to figure out like a different way. Like I just every now and then send a message and be like, hey, how are you doing? you know Whatever it is, it's it's a new day. However it is that you communicate, my communication style just tends to be sending memes or interesting videos that I was like, hey, isn't this cool? And that's how my friends that I haven't seen in a while know I still think of them and I care about them, right?
Aw.
um, um but we also have to consider, because sometimes we're like, well, this person's going through something, we feel bad, we force ourselves to be there, but then we're kind of like zoned out, and then the person that we're there to help is not getting any of the help we said we were going to provide, or like we're doing it in a bad mood, or because people can tell, like even if they're like nowadays. I feel so old, but not like the younger generation is going like talking about vibes, right? Like I feel a vibe from that person. And a lot of it is because it's the body language, right? Like or expressions. They may not be like full on expressions, but we can kind of tell they don't really want to be there or they're not paying attention, So if we're not in a space where we can provide help, then maybe we can provide resources, right? Or maybe we can do something else to help until we are ready to provide that help that we want to do. Um, Shirley, you mentioned earlier something about the representation and grief,
Yes.
and I actually wanted to talk about this because you both use popular culture in your advocacy. So I just kind of wondering, like, how do you use that? How do you incorporate it?
April, you want to go first?
um, oh gosh. So one of the things that people can do, and I don't know if they're, what fandoms they have, but there's a lot of feeling safe within your fandoms and expressing who you are, who you truly feel you are. And I don't know if the listeners or you guys have heard of Dr. Janina Scarlett.
She
Yeah.
was actually one of my professors,
Oh, she
and
was
the
amazing.
reason why I do this. So yes,
Amazing.
I've heard of her.
Did
So
you
one, Elizabeth, I'm
writing
super
fandoms for mental health?
she does a lot of pop culture.
Okay.
No, she does the superhero therapy.
Mhm.
Oh, I forgot her name. Someone else does the fandom one. Oh, there's
Uh,
a bunch of fandom books actually.
yeah, Lynn Zubernis does a lot for the supernatural fandom.
Mm.
And then you've got Dr. Travis Langley.
Oh,
He does a lot with let's see, I believe the psychology of Batman, Jokers and the Women Who Loved Them. They're both phenomenal.
mhm.
But with Dr. Scarlett, one of the things that we can do by embracing that is embracing the power of storytelling. Because there's a lot of research out there that shows that if a person embraces their own hero's journey, for lack of better terms, they can integrate that, like, that type of loss into their own personal story. So telling stories about their loved one and incorporating the journey with loss or the journey with grief as part of their hero's journey, they can actually get a little bit more fulfillment of that, and they'll be happier when it comes to their overall journey because they're the hero of their own story. And integrating that whole loss into their life story can actually provide meaning and a way to honor their loved one's memory. So
Well,
that's one thing that we love.
I mean, like everything that you were just saying, I was like, that's the movie Coco. Yeah, because I was like, yeah, because it gives so I grew up in Mexico up until like I was like 9 years old, but we didn't have the Day of the Dead the way that is portrayed in the movie. Mexico is it's really big, and so every state has like a different culture and stuff like that. So where I grew up in, it was more of a religious thing, but it still gave a lot of families sort of like a I guess a reason to discuss that grief, a place and a time to sort of gather and support each other and like discuss that grief, right? A lot of one of the things that I say to my clients all the time, I was like, you just need to get it out of your body or your system, whether it's writing it down or like whispering it to yourself or sharing it to someone else. Sometimes you just need to get it out
Mhm.
um, in order to either validate yourself or make it seem like it's a real thing, because a lot of things, when something catastrophic happens, a lot of the times where our brain is like, no, it can't be real,
Yeah.
like there is no way
Yeah.
this is happening, right? So being able to voice it out, and or just having a space where you can do that is just so fantastic, like so much help. um yeah, just in general.
So you saw me look to my right hand side.
Mm,
It's because I remembered a different name and I was checking my brain. There is another book called Superhero Grief. That's why I got confused.
Oh,
That's by a different person, Dr. Jill Harrington, um, and Dr. Robert Niemeyer. But I catch on to the superhero like a moth to a flame because, first of all, no superhero became a superhero because everything was great. They all had to struggle first, right? If I often in class I present, I say, let's think about a 12-year-old who is suddenly finds herself with her entire country is this family and country is destroyed. She's in a new place. Um, the new family she has, her sister doesn't like her at all. She doesn't know the culture. She's undocumented in a rural area of the U.S. And I'm
mhm.
like, oh dear God. And I say, yeah, that's Supergirl. And they, right? It's Supergirl. I just
mhm.
described Supergirl, but the way I described it, they would never think about it.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I'm liking a lot better now, because even for the villains, we are getting these sort of like backstories that sort of like explain a lot of those things.
But
but but to your knowledge, Shirley, the way that these things are portrayed in the media, is it actually helping the advocacy, or do you think it's hindering it?
so because I do solution focused real therapy, I believe we need to talk about what works rather than what doesn't work. If I
Mhm.
sit here and I go into a tangent about how popular culture is doing it wrong, I I get stuck in that. Nobody's gonna do this better. So let's talk about the better. First of all, no, it's not portrayed well at all. The idea that you grieve and then you're over it is ridiculous. And my favorite, by the way, Supergirl quote is, we don't need to be heroes, we need to be partners with our clients. So we
Mm,
work together towards something else rather than, be the hero. I swipe in with my DSM and I'm going to save the day with my DS. It's not going to work. But also, there are few and far between good representations. And those would be the ones that say grief is a lifelong journey, but your life grows. And so it's not the same. It doesn't take the same amount of space in your life. Uh, we still think about them even after age, number of years, whatever number you want to insert here. Those are the good representations. That's how you should do it. This is how you should do it. When you also say different people grieve in different ways, and there is no one right way. So, right, popular culture often falls into one of the two traps. Either you grieve and then you're over it by the next episode, or you get stuck in your grief and you're broken forever. And these are your options. Neither of them exist in real life. So, the good representations will be, I am still grieving and I am also carrying on my life. And grief is a part of the puzzle of who I am now. Because if I'm in a new world, I also need to be a new me. Krypton, Supergirl didn't have powers. She's in a new world, she needs to be a new her.
wait, now I'm really curious. Can you share some of the good representations you've seen?
Ah, yes.
I was like, I didn't want to put you in the spot, but if you have them on top of your head,
So
please share.
I just said it. Supergirl does a great job. A
Mhm.
great job. I did not. What I love about it is we somehow, even the geeks among us, we don't expect to find it on a superhero show with but Supergirl does a fantastic job.
Mhm.
Uh, there is a show called The Way Home. It's uh, a time travel mystery
Mhm.
drama mystery. It's on Hallmark. Anybody who knows me, as soon as they say Hallmark, they go, "You're not the Hallmark person. What do you mean Hallmark?" I am not the Hallmark person. I don't like the things that are being wrapped up in a cute, nice package and tied in a bow. I don't.
Mhm.
Somehow the way home landed there. Don't ask me how, but they do an amazing work on portraying both ambiguous grief, which is grief without that is not necessarily definite, right? When I grieve some loss, that I don't know how it happened or even if it happened,
Mhm.
and bereavement. They do a fantastic job on both. And that caught me completely by surprise. Um, I only watched this show because two of my favorite actors are on it. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. They'll probably disappoint on that one because it's Hallmark. And then kaboom, it's amazing. And I can
Mhm.
watch it over and over again. So these two did amazing job about grief. There were good snippets in Grey's Anatomy. I don't remember the episodes, but there are some good snippets. I think the way they showed Meredith, how she coped with Derek's death was very grounded. Um, those are my. Oh, and there is a Facebook TV show called Sorry for Your Loss, which is amazing Facebook TV with Elizabeth Olsen, who somehow, it seems like she always plays a widow, but I may be wrong. Uh, Lessons in chemistry, the part of grief is amazing. Um, I did not appreciate the way WandaVision did it at all. It was
I was
too
going to ask you about that because of the stages.
because of the stages. It was too stagey.
Yes.
my kids watched it too, and they're like, "This is too stagey." I said, "Yeah, I did my job right with you too." Uh, so I did not, but I'm sorry for your loss. She makes up for it like big time. She does a great job there. Dead to me uh, looks at death as a with humor, dark humor, which is my favorite kind. So those are my go-to.
So, what are your thoughts with how death is depicted in Spider-Man when Uncle Ben dies? Like,
I admit to my ignorance, I haven't watched it yet.
okay,
I'm like,
so with
which Spider-Man?
Right.
yes,
There's so many.
You have to tell me, like, I'm more into DC just because by the time I came to Marvel, their universe was so big I can't catch up.
okay. Spider-Man, essentially, you have the death of Uncle Ben, and that kind of begins Spider-Man's whole origin story. So Peter Parker feels a huge sense of responsibility and commitment to using his powers for good, basically because he could have stopped, if you've seen the movie, he could have stopped Uncle Ben's killer from, running through and jumping on the elevator, if you've seen the Tobey Maguire version. And the guy, even when he got on the elevator, said thanks. And then he shot Uncle Ben for use of his vehicle. But when we're looking at Spider-Man, that can actually serve as a catalyst for growth and the formation of Spider-Man's entire superhero identity
Right.
because he lost Uncle Ben. There's also Batman, because you said DC.
Mm.
um, so with Batman, Bruce Wayne starts when depending
When
on
your
what
parents are yes.
he'll either fall down, the hole with all of the bats, or he'll lose his parents. And what that happens is because he had a traumatic loss, he witnessed his parents, death. Um, his grief actually eventually manifests into a huge lifelong mission to fight crime and prevent others from experiencing similar losses. He's a vigilante. um, but that with Batman, especially in the comic books, it really shows how the narrative of grief can illustrate the shaping of one's purpose and actions. So
I was thinking particularly with Batman as well. It's kind of like that, almost a representation of like not really moving on with your life because he didn't.
Right,
He was just kind of like, this is me, and I'm just not even gonna try anything else. I'm just
right,
gonna like turn it into like my life mission
right.
to do that. Yeah.
So Batman is very interesting because he's not carrying his grief with him and moves on, but he's also not completely broken and devastated forever. He's a little bit of both.
Mm.
He's a little bit of both. So he's interesting because, to be fair, I think with some therapy, he could have done something different, right?
I always say that. I was like, listen, if Anakin it would have received therapy, if Loki would have received therapy, everything would have been so much better.
Gollum, right? If the Gollum sought therapy before he became the Gollum, it would be lovely. But then we
Oh,
would have,
Lord of the Rings. Oh, I understood
but
your reference.
yeah, but I think uh, Batman is a great representation of, even in this case where stayed, he did action, he took action, and he didn't completely broken, but he kind of never moved from being his parents' son. Even in that case, we see his life grow around it. Not maybe in the way that we would prescribe, but he did something with it, right? We can't be stuck because we are living beings, and change, pardon my cliche, is the only constant.
Mhm.
Now, Peter Parker, by what you tell me, has done something much different. His life did grow,
Mm.
and he did have more in his life than just the grief. So that's what I want to see, and that's why Supergirl is one of my favorite, because she took that pain and the powers that came with it and did something and grew her life. Amazing. The series, the movie is also good, but the series, and she grew her life into something magnificent. Um, the Way Home, because I can't go 5 minutes without mentioning them, show everything 20 years after the original losses. So you can already see how the life grew and evolved, and they're still grieving. And that's where my jaw hits the ground with amazement and awe. Because you can see, yes, it's been 20 years. They're by no means prescribed to the definition of stuck in their grief, but they are still grieving and go on a time travel journey to try and fix it and show that you can't fix it.
I was thinking too, because I have been in a mood where I just been watching anime lately, and I was thinking about this post that I saw a while back saying that the way that emotions are shown in Korean shows, or Korean dramas, it's very different than in American dramas, because in Korean dramas you stay longer with the pain, or whatever emotion they're experiencing, and for American dramas they tend to move on relatively fast, because again those emotions make us feel uncomfortable. But I was thinking a lot about like a lot of the anime that I watch as well, there is like just episodes and episodes of people just sort of like sitting there and like reflecting on all of these sort of like um what their experience was like, what they're feeling, and things like that. And then I'm like, that's not something that we see
Yeah,
like in other shows, whether it's animated or not. It's again, because it's something that makes us feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, well, different cultures have different ways of approaching emotions. And unfortunately here in the US we've decided um it's better if it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But that's not true, because we're still experiencing that. And then that leads to a whole host of like, difficulty later on in life as well. um, so I am relatively new. I am very, very passionate about mental health providers being out in the community and reaching out and providing resources and help. So I know that you both reach out to the community in slightly different ways. I just want to hear from you. Like, how did you advocate for, suicide prevention, and how has the community received that?
Well, with Cause for Hope, we are very much, I don't want to say honoring, but we don't shy away from talking to individuals and talking to people and reaching out to say, hey, can we come and talk to you guys? Because Cause for Hope, the money that we raise goes into educational presentations about mental wellness and suicide prevention. One of the things that we do is actively reach out, and then because we're mostly in Missouri, we get a lot of people calling us saying, "Hey, is this weird?" um, and we're like, "Well, no, everyone's got perspectives, but." Talking to individuals about mental wellness and suicide prevention is okay. It's okay to do that. Oh, well, do you think you could talk to us? We're bless their hearts. I had some people reach out to us who were much older, and they're like, but I don't know if that applies to us. And I was like, well, did you like Star Trek? Well, yeah. Because Cause for Hope, we believe there's a little bit of geek inside everyone, whether they realize it or not.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
like I'm like, okay, so the reason why I ended up going with Psychology for Geeks for my nonprofit, it's because I believe everyone's a geek. Whether you're a geek about popular culture or
Mhm.
sports or music, you geek out about something.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we tease our sports ball fans, So you got football, basketball, and so on. And one of my favorite con experiences, because Missouri, Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champs. But we were at Comic-Con, and we had an individual walk by, and we're ornery, so we're like, "Oh my gosh, we love your cosplay!" Because he
Mhm.
had a jersey on.
Oh.
And he stopped and he looked around and he's like, "You talking to me?" I'm like, "Yeah, you." Because I think it was a Mahomes jersey, and I
Mhm.
was like, "Yeah, you're an awesome Mahomes." And then it sparked up that conversation of cosplay and, oh well, what is this? Because as you guys know, it's wonderful when someone walks over and like, what is this? And
Mhm.
then you can explain how you do it, and it's still one of my absolute favorite moments. We took a selfie together, which I'm not a good selfie taker. um, but every year when that guy comes back to Planet, we see each other and he's like, "Excellent cosplay," and we just have a laugh and give a high five, and he's on his way. And
Mhm.
it's just a beautiful reminder that little bit of geek, it's there. It's just
Yes.
because he loved what we did, and when you talk to people and you're like, we're just going to blend educational conversations with mental wellness and pop culture, and we'll have that kid who loves Spider-Man or who loves Elsa, or any other character who's known for their resilience and
Mhm.
not giving up. Even Dora the Explorer didn't give up. So
Yes.
there's a lot of ways that you can connect those dots and be an advocate and inspire others to go out and inspire hope so that people are here tomorrow.
I think if we can create hope, or rather grow hope in a session, a therapeutic session, then my work is done.
Yes.
It's everything I need. If all I get at the end of the session is someone knowing what they hope for, I have done enough.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But before I go on a tangent about hope theory, I will say I am part of the first uh, ever chat-based hotline.
Mm.
I'm a volunteer there, so I didn't need to create my own. I really admire you two for creating your own. I just joined an existing uh, non not for profit organization. In the community, I have a YouTube where I go and I say, here is how it's presented well, and here is why this is wrong. So I start with a phenomena, and then I say, here is how it goes, and here is how it's represented well. I'm a firm believer that talking about the bad representations will get me more of that. So I talk about a few good representations. And I break a sweat looking for them sometimes, but I get them.
My other question too was gonna be because I've had this sort of conversation with other providers before about how much responsibility the studios have in portraying mental health in a more
Mhm.
realistic way. And I'm like, they're there for entertainment. A lot of the times when they use anything that has to do with mental health is to drive the story forward
Right.
because they're really essentially storytellers and entertainers. They're not there to be like, oh, is this true? Like, if they are doing something, we will highly appreciate if they did it the right way. And that will be fantastic. But also, we can't depend on them to do it. And I'm like, this is why it's so important for us to do things like this and
Yeah,
reach out to the community and provide like this is how like the resources and smash those stereotypes or
Yes.
that. Yeah.
I think there is a yes and here. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they're there for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have a power, it is my job to use it wisely. So I
Yes.
don't expect them to do my job and talk about mental health. And if they're using it to drive the story, at least get a consult and do it right. That's
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
not a lot to ask. That's
Yes.
that's where I see their responsibility. I do not expect the studios to come up with a movie about depression or anxiety and grief and all that thing. But I do expect that if they use grief as the push for change, then at
Mhm.
least portray it right and don't fell on the lie of now it's over. I think that's the end here. They have that, just like with any other stereotype, we expect them to represent right. Representation matters.
Mhm.
And we know that about minority groups, we know that about marginalized groups. I think I can speak for a whole generation of women. When Wonder Woman came out, the first one in the 70s, Linda Carter, bless her, because suddenly women could be more than Popeye's olive oil, who all she did was get in trouble, scream, faint, and wait for Popeye to save her.
Yep.
Suddenly, women could be the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And we can
And
see that.
that's such an interesting segue too, because if we look at fairy tales, and this is like the older Grimm fairy tales and even some of the Disney ones, women were actually heroes. They
Yeah.
were rewritten so that a woman would need to rely on a savior, a person to save them or rescue them. And in some of the texts, women were rewritten to be the villains, which is so interesting because I studied that when I was working on my undergrad, and it was just like, what? I had no idea that original stories actually had women as, the hero. It's fascinating, and I love Wonder Woman. She's my person.
She's my first. So I'm going to
Oh.
share a very personal story. When I was about 3 or 4, I approached my mom and I said, Mom, when I grow up, I want to be a man. Now I'm 51, so the term transgender was not yet common.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom didn't say, No, you can't. She said, Okay, why? Which is a great question. And I said, because if I said I feel like a boy, maybe we'd go a different route. But instead I said, because all that women can do is get in trouble, scream, faint, and wait for a man to rescue them. And my mom said, well, that's not really true. You don't have to do that. You can be the Popeye of the story, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I was 4. What did I know? Popeye. Fast forward 4 years, Wonder Woman finally aired in Israel. It was already a dumb show here by the time I asked my mom to be a man, but it finally aired in Israel in 1981. I was 8, and I never wanted to be a man again.
Oh,
because I am not transgender.
Mhm.
I just refuse to be the victim.
yes. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's amazing.
Now, don't get me wrong, plenty of people are truly transgender, right? On
Mhm.
my wall, there is Nicole Maines, right? She exists on my wall. There, but it wasn't the right path for me because I
Mhm.
didn't have the right reason to do anything but be me. But can
Mhm.
you imagine growing up and not knowing you can do whatever it is that you want to do? We need representation. And just like Wonder Woman represented women who are heroes, and just like we need LGBTQA characters to represent that, and we need people of color so they know they can be. Remember what happened with Black Panther, right?
Yes.
What it did for the Black community. And um, Lightning, something I forgot the name. I sometimes
Like,
forget names. Come again? Um,
Chadwick?
no, there is the Lightning hero. Never mind. I'll remember later.
I'm like Zeus.
No,
No,
no, it's is it Black Lightning?
yes, probably.
DC, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I you know who you're talking about, but I just
But
keep
we
thinking
can't
of Black
remember the name
Lightning.
of the show.
Is it the
I
Percy
mean,
Jackson? Is that
no,
Mm-mm.
no, no. Percy Jackson is. But so we need all that, right?
Mhm.
And so we also need it for mental health. We need good
Mhm.
representation because representation matters. And if my child comes to me and says she wants to be someone else than who she is, I want her to find herself in what is represented. Because whether we want to or not, people, especially young people, they learn from popular culture. I
Mhm.
wish they didn't sometimes. TikTok University is horrible, but
Yes, exactly.
they do.
Well, let me see. I think it's a yes and for me
There you
as
go.
well, because a lot of the I mean, the primarily reason why I started Psychology for Geeks is because I had this conversation with one of my supervisors, and we kind of had difference in opinions. He was from a older generation, and he said like, "Yeah, just don't be online. Like, you don't have to do that to yourself."
Oh,
And then I'm like, but I want to. I like being online. Online is what helped me do a lot of things and stay in communication with my parents, with my friends. Uh, at that time, I was living in Indiana, and everybody else was in California or someone else. And I'm like, this is how I communicate with them. Like earlier, I said I share memes and stuff, right? And I'm like, if you take that away from me, I'm like, how am I supposed to communicate with
mhm.
other people? And I think it depends. I think for this, for social media, yes, it can be very toxic, very bad, but that's why
Mhm.
we need to have boundaries for ourselves, right? Like how long are you doing this for? Is this actually helping, or is this making you feel worse, right? Because there are people that, most of the, like, just for everyone in general, whatever it is that we share online, it's usually the best of times, right?
Yeah.
We don't share every single time we're feeling sad or doubting ourselves or like doing all those things, right? Nowadays there are people who are doing that. A lot of content creators are talking about their own mental health, and I love that. I
That
love that they are talking about, hey, depression is real. It's
Mhm.
hard. Some days I just need to not stream today. Sorry, I'm really into streamers nowadays. And there are others that saying, hey, I've gotten a lot of people saying, hey, I was on TikTok and I think I might also be ADHD because I identify with a lot of the symptoms, and these are people that would never otherwise would have thought. And then so once we start discussing, it's like, yes, you're neurodivergent in some way, and here are some ways to make your life better, because we are constantly forcing ourselves to be to fit sort of like in this specific category, and because we don't know otherwise that we can do better, or that we can be someone else or be the heroes of our own story. That's kind of sometimes what leads to this deep depression, and this, suicide is now an option on the table, because I never had that. There was no representation. Everybody just made fun of me for who I was, or who I was trying to be, for being myself. And again, those problems just sort of like roll. And surely I cannot appreciate you more for saying like, let's just focus on what's going right and do better on those
Yes.
things, right? Because a lot of the times what happens is that a lot of providers too have like, oh, they're doing really bad in this thing, so stop doing that. And I'm like, yeah, but let's just highlight the ones that are doing well,
Right.
and be like, hey, not bad, but it could be a little bit better, right? Like, let's just kind of like level up and get that like positive feedback going, kind of thing. And hopefully we'll see a bit more of a change then, in those, if we acknowledge that, it's getting better. It's getting better. It's not so bad as it used to be.
So I'm gonna jump in with one more thing.
Mm,
So when I say TikTok University is horrible, I mean TikTok is not the place when you seek facts.
very true, very true.
That's what I meant by that. That's why it's a great resource. It's not a wonderful university. That's
Mm,
one. The thing is, and I may be speaking more as an Israeli who's seen some bad stuff going on specifically. But the other thing is, one of my favorite snippets of shows to show my clients is there is an in the at the end of the seventh episode of the third season of Supergirl. Alex tells Kara, if you want us to drive safely, give me the keys. And Kara starts arguing, I'm a great driver. They have this really funny banter.
mhm,
Um, but at the end, Kara says, she hands her the keys and she goes, if you're so worried about my driving, why didn't you say something yesterday? And Alex says, because yesterday, getting into a car accident didn't seem like a big deal. Today, I would like to avoid it. And Kara goes, progress. And I analyzed that, by the way, on one of my videos, and I go, did you
mhm,
ever think this would be a sign of, this would be a good sign? And most people would tell you no. Obviously, they don't want to get into a car accident, but sometimes a small step forward is just not wanting to be in a car accident, right? And we need to notice those tiny little shifts.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually going to ask you both, is that what is it that people should know about suicide and suicide prevention, in terms of like resources, or how do you talk to people that, a loved one that just brought it up and you don't know what to say? Like, how do we do that?
Oh. I've gone first quite a bit. You sure, Shirley?
You want me to go? You just talk about it. If someone brings it up, the first thing to do is, okay, tell me more. Just because that sentence says, I am not going to cower away. I am
Mhm,
here to listen. If you are courageous enough, and I often do it on the hotline and get like other people are chatting me and they're like, what are you doing? So if you're courageous enough, you can ask them, what is it that you hope will change
Mhm.
if you're if you actually do this? Not because now I'm going to tell you how to do it better. You're not going to convince me this is a good idea. That's not my point. My point is to see what it is that you actually want.
mhm,
The great Milton Erickson said the first answer to a question is never the answer. If I ask you what you hope for, and the first thing you tell me is probably not your ultimate answer, so I'm going to keep asking you.
mhm,
And without fail, it will be something that you don't have to die to get to.
mhm.
So, with the exception of how do they call it in Sweden when you do like when someone can die by suicide with medical help?
uh I think it's called assisted suicide. Is
Yeah,
that what?
yeah. There are exceptions for everything, but normally when people say that they can achieve what they hope for without dying, so by staying there and asking those questions, I am A, not afraid. I'm not leaving them alone. And B, I get them to think about what it is that they actually hope for. And then they rehearse it in their mind, and their mind will automatically come up with new ways. That's how I do it.
No, I think that's right, because this is something, again, like we were saying earlier, a lot of the times it's like we're just overwhelmed, we don't see another way out. right? And then when someone's like, oh, okay, well, let's just do this one thing, and then you're like, oh wait, there was another way. Well, I'll take the other way, right? Because that's, I really don't actually want to die. I just want to not feel these emotions or like all of these things. And when someone sort of like provides another way, it's, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see that happening. um
And April, I don't know if you read that, but they did a research with people who barely survived suicide, like the sole survivor of the Golden Bridge and
Oh,
Golden
yeah.
mm,
and all that. You know what's the first thought that comes to their mind once they've done it?
Oh
I
no.
didn't want this.
Yep.
Yes, right. And my job is never to provide different ways. My job is to get them to providing ways that are good for them, because what works for me won't work for you. But I'm
Hmm.
going to get you to think about that question.
One thing that I tell my clients too is that, hey, listen, therapy is kind of like an experiment. We are not going to immediately be like, haha, this is the root of the problem. And once we address this, it's going to fix everything. No, 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 no. That's not how any of this works, right? Just we are going to like try to figure out if this particular thing didn't work, no worries, we will try something else, right? And that's why I tell people, because sometimes I assign, well, I don't want to call it homework because that's already just gives me the heebie jeebies.
Sorry,
Like just
sorry,
like PTSD from having to do homework. So I call
sorry.
it, I call it side quest. I'm like,
Oh
so
yeah.
your side quest for the week is to, try this one thing. And just remember, if you forget to do it, if it doesn't really work out for the week, not a problem. Come back next time, we discuss. Because I can just sit here and tell you, hey, listen, you have anxiety. Here's step 1 through 10, and that's going to fix your anxiety. It's not going to work because everybody has a different personality, different likes, different lifestyles. So we have to modify it in a way that it helps for them specifically, right? And that's going to take a while, so it's going to be a bit of a wait to try to figure it out. But like once you kind of start understanding that, hey, there's other options that we can try, it gets a little bit better. But again, just to rephrase what you had said, Shirley, like if somebody does come to you saying, suicide is now on the table for me, you don't have to say much as long as you're there to listen and be like, hey, what's going on, can you tell me more about it? Like, do you feel comfortable? Do you want me to do this one thing for you? Like, I can go with you to make like the first appointment for therapy or whatever it is that they're looking for. Like, we don't have to come up with a solution for them. We just have to like join them in their journey for a little bit to provide the support that they need, right? And I think that's, maybe it was just, maybe it's just me, but like, back before grad school and everything, I was just like, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm not gonna do anything, right? Like, we don't have to find the solution, we just have to join. And again, I think, Shirley, you mentioned, like, if you're able to sort of like, you know breathe life a little bit into like this hope, that this person is having, that's fantastic. Like, your job is done. I will even argue that just because you provided a safe space to discuss this, that's already help,
Yep.
right? Because sometimes that's all that is needed, right? Again, we just need to get it out. And if we get it out with someone who's like, yeah, man, that sucks, that's horrible, like, I'm so sorry you had to go through that, it's just so, it's I can't even explain. It just feels so good, to be able to say it and not have somebody be like, you, like, what is wrong with you? Why are you thinking, like, are you weak? Like, because that's usually what happens, like, Shirley, you were saying, oh, what I need right now is for you to come at 2 in the morning and cook me like, a meal. Most people are gonna be like, what is wrong with you calling me at 2 a.m.? I'm like, but you said, that you're willing to help.
Well, and the beautiful thing that you just said, Elizabeth, was create a safe space.
Mm,
And it's also, it matters how you approach that individual who states, oh, well, I don't want to be here anymore. And sometimes people will vaguely allude to their suicidal ideation, such as, I don't want to be here anymore. People would be better off without me. And if you don't have a pronounced, hey, I am suicidal right now, I want to kill myself, someone doesn't say that, but they're alluding to suicidal ideation, it's okay to empathetically, and I stress empathetically, ask, are you thinking of killing yourself? It's not going to put an idea in that person's head, but when you ask that question, there's a few things that a person needs to do to make sure that they ask it correctly. One, make sure you have the time to sit there and listen. Because it's like, well, yeah, actually, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I've got something to do. How would that make that person feel?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Because
Mm-hmm.
people who genuinely care want to do their best. I mean, I'm guilty of, hey, how you doing? And then going about my day.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do we stop and say, hey, how you doing? Like you guys mentioned grad school. When you're in a class with somebody and they've been one way for a certain amount of time, and then all of a sudden their behavior completely shifts, or they're not showing up to classes anymore, as long as you can genuinely ask them how they're doing and say, hey, I noticed you haven't been in class for the last 4 class periods. What's going on? Do you want to grab a coffee? You grab a coffee, you sit down with that individual, and you can say, I'm genuinely worried about you. You're part of my cohort and you haven't been there. Are you comfortable telling me what's going on? And they disclose, well, my life is crap right now. I can't do this, I can't do that. And I'm thinking of killing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Shirley, I don't know if you guys use it, but we use the ladder up risk assessment, or you can look at them as stair steps. So you say, oh, well, you're thinking of killing yourself. Okay, well, can you tell me, tell me more about that? The more detailed their plan is, the more imminent that risk is.
Mm-hmm.
If they say, well, it's spring break is coming up, so I'm planning on taking some pills when my entire family's out, and they won't return, or course base, they won't return for at least a week. Okay, well, do you have access to those pills? Well, yes, I haven't been taking my prescription, so I've got 90 days worth. Okay, well, do you have a time frame? Yeah, 6 p.m. on Friday is when everyone's supposed to be out of the dorms or the entire family leaves for vacation. So the more detail they have is another step up on that ladder, on that risk assessment. And what we do is we tell people, if they have that detailed plan, it's okay for you to say, hey, I genuinely care about you. Your life has value. I think you're an amazing, wonderful individual. And do not, and I'm going to use Shirley's word, bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Do not bullshit them. If it's a genuine thing and it's coming from this place of empathy, you validate how they're feeling. You say, I can understand that things are going really, really wrong and you feel like this, but I care about you. I want to make sure that we can get you the help that you deserve. Do you mind going with me to the counseling center on campus if you've got one? Or do you mind sitting with me while we make a phone call together, or text this crisis text line, which in the States it's 988.
Mm-hmm.
Call or text 24 hours a day. And it's not just for individuals who experience suicidal ideation, but letting people know, hey, let's do this together. And then having that follow up when they get the assistance that they deserve, and letting them know, hey, it's okay. I'm here for you. Tell them that you are not their personal therapist, but it's okay to vent every now and then, because therapy is amazing. True therapy is not easy at all. I joke with my friends, like, good therapy sucks. Like you unpack so much, but it's so worthwhile because you're on your own healing journey. And when you're talking to the individual that's expressed that suicidal ideation, and they're like, oh, well, I just don't understand why I just can't be perfect, or I don't understand why my brain's not working. it's okay. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be frustrated with the process, but healing takes time. You know, just like suicidal ideation doesn't develop overnight, and those thoughts of I don't want to be here, they don't develop overnight. It's a journey. It's a process. It's okay to give yourself the same exact grace and have that hope that there will be a better day. It's just going to take some time to get there. And using their superheroes. I know, Elizabeth, super jealous that you had the opportunity to be with Dr. Scarlett. When she first started out with her postdoc, she was working with military individuals, like veterans that were coming back and people who were still active duty.
Mm.
And they saw their depression or their PTSD as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did and how superhero therapy got started, was she one day asked them, well, who's your favorite superhero? You've used Supergirl, Shirley, and, you know, Superman. So the super family, um, they were superheroes and they were amazing, right? Well, do they have a weakness?
Kryptonite.
Kryptonite, yes, that was kryptonite. So when she was talking to these individuals, these heroes who had literally just come back from war, okay, well, Superman is your absolute favorite superhero. Having an allergy to kryptonite, does that make Superman any less of a superhero? Well, no. Okay. Well, you're struggling with PTSD or depression or anxiety. Does that make you any less of a hero? And that's when the light bulb went on, associating themselves like and seeing themselves as a hero, someone who's not, you know, they can struggle, but they're not less of a person because of that struggle. Just like Superman and Supergirl, they are not less heroes because of kryptonite. And recognizing that, you know, PTSD is that person's kryptonite, doesn't make them any less. And talking to people and saying, hey, you matter. Let's do this together. You're not alone. And letting them know how much you value them and how appreciative you are of them coming to talk to you. Because that puts a lot of trust in you. But responding appropriately is where we can save those lives. And letting them know, hey, let's do this together. You're not alone.
And I would just add to that, I think because what I seen quite a lot, especially in media, is the whole, but you have so much to live for.
The guilt trip, the guilt trip to stay alive. And that's
What are your kids gonna do if you're gone?
So I'm gonna jump in here because that one plus something that you said before, Elizabeth, really struck me. Uh, April, you live in Missouri, right?
Yep.
Never been. One of the states I haven't visited yet. If you tell me you want to go from point A to point B, and I say, well, take this route, you're going to tell me to shut up because I don't know Missouri.
exactly.
Correct? I'm guessing here.
Well, I'll be like, I don't think that's a good route.
Or you say,
I'm a little more tactful.
but somehow, when it comes to mental health, people have the idea that they know the route.
Yes.
Try this, try that. Breathing. The box breathing is incredible, but not for everybody. It is incredible for me. It's not incredible for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the exception of someone is hyperventilating in front of me and I have to get them to breathe normally and I'll do whatever trick is in my book, I trust my clients. They know their route. My job is to ask the question. You tell me where is point B. I don't even care where is point A. I want to know where is point B, which is the hope. And then I'm going to start asking you about that. And at some point, I'll say, were you ever a little bit less on A? Like, have you ever stepped out of A? And you'll say, yes. Okay, how'd you step out of A? And you'll tell me, and you'll get to your route. And I will trust you that you will get to your route. So the only way for me to get this amazing life is if I die. Have you ever thought you can get this life in a different way? Yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the route, right? And To me, first of all, it's therapy that's not painful. It's not unpainful, but it's not as painful as tell me everything about point A where you don't want to be.
Mhm.
And also the trust that I put in you, right? I don't need to say it. I sometimes I said to my clients, "Yeah, I trust you," but most of the times I don't even need to. So I don't know. And as for superheroes, remember the original Wonder Woman as Linda Carter? She's completely human vulnerable.
You know, I had a while back, it might have been like maybe almost 2 years ago now. I did a post where I did my attempt at doing a blog for my website, where I talk about what it means to be a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted it in this like geeky Facebook group. And somebody said, "Oh, I don't think superheroes are real," because I think the title of the post or something, it was like superheroes in real life or something. And then they're like, "Yeah, we don't really have superheroes in real life." And I'm like, it, I was like, I think about it differently, because I think we are all superheroes
Yes.
when we overcome something that is very difficult for us. Sometimes that means extreme poverty, or it means fighting this illness that there's a lot of struggle and a lot of money that's invested in medication and whatever it is. And sometimes it's just getting up from bed and taking a shower,
Yep. Mhm.
because that's just something that is very difficult for me to do right now, but I did it anyway. Right. And that is sort of like in essence of like being a superhero, because there again, there's a lot of people that absolutely love Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is one of those sort of like heroes that is very sort of like relatable,
Mhm.
because all of his sort of like concerns and stuff are very much like our concerns. Like Batman, fantastic. Used to love him when I was little. I'm like, but he's mega rich. Like I can't identify with that. That's how he solved his problems. Like super cool gadgets with all his money. That's kind of like his superpower. I cannot relate to that. Other people might, right? So and there's like others like Superman. Like he has like he's an alien. Like I can't identify with that, right? But with Spider-Man, he's very much like, I just want to help like the neighborhood, and all these things. And of course every superhero has like things that we identify with, but there are very few superheroes that were like, oh, I can just be like that. Like, can I like he's like me for real. Like I can do this thing, right? There's not many of those, because there's a lot of elements of like fantasy out there. um but yeah, you can be your own superhero, and sometimes it's just overcoming those things that we are struggling with,
Mhm.
whether we do it by ourselves or with the help or like a lot of help from other people. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. The fact is that you did it, right? Because those people that were helping you couldn't have done the progress that you did, because it's your life, it's your progress, right? They're just there for support and to encouragement and stuff, so it doesn't take away from the fact that you still did all of that hard work.
That's amazing. I love that.
I think what I love about Wonder Woman and Supergirl is not just that they're women, I mean, of course, but also the original Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, the original.
Mhm,
And Diana Prince, she's 100% vulnerable. You said relatable, nothing gets more relatable with that than
mhm,
and she still goes out there and does these things, knowing full well that if she can't do the twist, make the
mhm,
turn, literally turn to become Wonder Woman, she's dead. Real simple. And she still goes out there. That's a superpower that we all possess. That's one. And with Supergirl, what made me like the show so much is yes, she's an alien, she can fly. I can't relate to that, but I can relate to how much she relies on her team.
mhm,
He becomes Supergirl when the world already knows kryptonite exists.
Mhm.
She lives in a world where her vulnerability is known and
mhm,
people use it. And she relies on her people. on the sidekicks. And that's what therapists we are. And I know a lot of therapists are going to be mad at me right now, so I'm going to give a warning here. We are not the heroes. We are the sidekicks.
Mm.
Yes.
Get over yourselves.
You do not have all the answers, and that's okay. For like younger like therapists who are starting sort of like their journey, I think uh, there is this element of like, I need to know how to fix it, or I need to know where to go, or like, what the next step in the process is. And I'm like, no, because again, like we said, sometimes just you providing that safe space, that's so much, right?
Mhm.
Like sometimes there's clients that come in and then they're just like getting it all of their system, talking about all of these things, and I'm like, I just feel like I'm doing nothing, but I am doing a lot, because I am empathizing, I am validating their experience, I am providing a safe space for them. And sometimes that's all that's needed. Sometimes there is a little bit more, that goes into it. But you don't really have to know all the answers, and you can sort of like admit it to your clients and be like, hey, I just don't really know what to do. We can work together and figure it out. I openly talk about, not only like on social media and stuff, but like also to my clients, how I have ADHD. And because I say it, like I was like, sometimes I ask them questions and then they're like, I'm not really sure, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know, I asked because I thought you would have known. I was like, I was gonna steal your answer. I have no idea what to do in the situation, so good luck with that. And I'm like, no, okay, let's work together and try to figure out, what we can do. And then sometimes I say like, hey, you know what, help me. Sometimes I do this one thing, and that's very helpful for me. You want to give that a try? Do you think that's something that'd be helpful for you? And then they're like, no, or yes, and or we modify it, to fit their lifestyle. But like, again, so sort of like, we are also human. We don't need to have all the answers, right? And again, that's one thing that I tell my clients all the time. I'm like, hey, we're only human. Like, we are not like perfect, overly powerful beings, right? And I'm like, yes, it's okay for us to cry. It's okay for us to feel grief. It's okay for us to not always win, right? Like, sometimes we kind of have to take the losses. And as long as we learn from there and can move on, right? And not sort of like get stuck in the, I am never gonna be able to overcome this, so why even try? Because that's another thing that can happen, right? Like, there's this hopelessness that
Mm.
can, we can either convince ourselves, or other people convince ourselves, by other people either saying that's not a thing, or that's not real. Or, in a lot of Mexican households, there's the, you just need something to do, right? Or like, oh, if you're bored or you're depressed, I'll give you something, so you forget about it. And again, it's sort of like this, just keep yourself busy. But
Mhm.
that's not a problem.
No, it's not. And sometimes one of the beautiful things about the human brain, and people with ADHD has this superpower more, is we do multiple things at the same time.
Mhm.
Something to do, you can still feel sad
Mhm.
because you do multiple things at the same time.
Hmm. Well, that's one of the things that I love so much about the movie Inside Out, because
Yes,
they were like, hey, you can be happy and sad at the same time, and
yes,
that's okay.
yes. Everybody
Yes.
got so hung on anxiety, and it was portrayed well. They skipped this part altogether.
It was amazing. I loved the second iteration.
Yes,
Like
right.
it was I went with a friend of mine and her daughter who
Mm.
just turned a teenager, and we leave and she turns to me, she goes, oh my gosh, how did they get in my brain?
Yes,
And it normalized everything that oh, bless her
Yes.
heart,
yes,
everything she was feeling. And I love that whole Inside Out movies in general,
yeah,
just because one, it's talking about those emotions, and it doesn't make them so scary, because that's what we tend to do, right? If we don't understand it, if we can't put a label on it, we avoid it because it's too scary.
yeah,
And with my friend's daughter, it was beautiful for her to see that it was depicted in a movie. And everyone else who was walking out, like there were some, tweens and some teenagers, and all of them were having the exact same conversations that we were having. And it was mind blowing for me, because I was like, oh, you as an older individual, as an undisclosed number of years old, I remember when
Very high level. You're in the high level of life. Yes, you've mastered a lot of things.
Yes, yes. I don't do ages anymore. It's levels.
Levels, yes.
But when Buffy the Vampire Slayer first came
Oh
out,
yes.
or the
Mm,
Charmed ones, it was it was like, oh, girls can be heroes too. Just like with Wonder Woman with you, Shirley.
mhm,
It was that, oh my gosh, where have these people been? And Buffy was flawed and
Yes.
she had issues, but she also had her team.
mm,
And when we look at therapeutic services in general, um, that's part of the person's team, right?
mhm,
Um, they're they're not the starring person in that individual's movie or their journey, but they're an amazing side character that helps with, as you call them, side quests, which I'm going to use from now on.
Yeah.
Give my children the side quest to clean their rooms.
yeah, right, right. It just sounds more interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. And I will say, I watched Buffy as an adult already. I skipped that when I was a teen, but Charmed I watched as a younger
Oh,
person, and I'm at level 51. I have no problem with that. But but with Charmed ones, they have one of the best grief representations I've seen.
oh my gosh. When Prue dies.
When Prue dies. Now,
Oh,
do I love that anger turned her into a monster? No, that part is terrible. But when they finally get her to be angry at what she is angry at, that was amazing.
mhm.
I have a bit of a problem with all the people coming back to life, but that's what it's charmed ones, right? Nobody expected the charmed. It was charmed, not charmed ones. That's people don't expect that to happen in real life. That was great. The moment Prue died is great.
Well,
That,
and to look at people that we love from from our growing up, and to look at Shannon's like recent death,
yeah,
like it's just, even though we may have never met that person, or been able to talk to that individual, that was someone that was an important part of your life. So it's okay to grieve that loss because she was an amazing actress.
mhm,
Um, I mean, Beverly Hills 90210. I remember talking on the playground to to the other girls about what had happened that night, and you know Dylan and everyone else. Like, it's just, it's acknowledging that that loss sucks because
yes,
she's such an amazing person.
And
But
and I think something that we have to sort of acknowledge is that just because we don't know that person, or the person is not real, in the case of like our favorite characters when they like die on screen, like it's still a grief. It's still
yes,
like us processing this. Like it doesn't make it like, oh well, it's a fictional world. And I'm like, but not to me. To me, it has been this safe space. So I don't think anybody does not know this, but my comfort character, my favorite character is Loki.
oh,
And the way that he's portrayed in Marvel, I don't know anything about the comics, sadly. And Norse mythology, that's a whole different animal there. But yeah, I just always have this sort of like idea, if Loki would have like just received therapy as a child, a lot of these things wouldn't have been a problem, right? And because I started my sort of like therapy career working with kiddos, that was sort of like my incentive. I'm like, I am trying to help these kiddos so they don't have to follow the same path that Loki did, right? Like I'm hoping, that that's kind of like the case. But even if we are working with adults, these things are still like impactful and for us, right? Because yeah, Loki kind of got me through grad school. Like just my love for him and like going to see all the movies, and I was lucky enough to live in San Diego and have amazing friends that took me to Comic Con, and I got to some Tom Hiddleston on stage, and that was just sort of like the highlight of like my grad school and what got me through it, right? So like in 20 years from now, and somebody asks me, who's your favorite character, whatever, it's probably still going to be Loki because he played such an important role in my life,
Right.
right? So when he was killed, like for reals on
Oh,
screen this time, my friend was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No." And it was like the within like the first 5 minutes of the movie starting, and like the rest of the movie was just sad. I was just like, he's just dead. But again, like these are such important people, and like even if we never get to meet the artists or the creators in person, they still mean a lot to us, right?
Yeah.
And because I was watching one of my favorite streamers, and just what was today? No, 2 days ago, they had a charity event and they raised $500,000. And I was just so proud. And I was like, I don't even know him, but I wanted to tell everyone. I was like, look at what this person was able to accomplish. I am so proud of them,
Yeah.
right? And like the same thing can happen, like in look whether we know the person or not. Uh, right, that's why having sort of like a supportive community around us is so helpful, right? And sometimes the community is someone we don't even know, or like a fictional character, right, that plays an important role. I heard this story. I don't remember if I told this story in the previous panel or not, but there is this one story of a person who was considering suicide, and because his favorite tabletop role players were doing like this weekly series of playing Dungeons and Dragons, he was like, okay, well, I'll just do it next week until like the next episode comes out, right? And then he just kind of kept postponing it like that because he wanted to watch the next episode, and then eventually he was able to overcome whatever he was struggling with. But like it was that sort of like the weekly thing that
Yeah.
these people were doing without even realizing how helpful it was for this particular person, until they walk up to them and be like, hey, you kind of like saved my life by just playing a game and putting it online, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all we need.
well, and the cool thing is with Dungeons and Dragons, you've got a lot of online support groups, and even therapists are using Dungeons and Dragons now to help with social emotional learning and help people with their skills and coping mechanisms. So
Mhm.
it's so cool to see, like, just the infusion of geekdom
Yeah.
Right,
in
right.
life.
Because it's so, again, like this isn't something just we do for fun. It has become part of our life, right? This is has become a part of us. So once we use it in therapy, it's just acknowledging another part of you, right? And it just makes it even more personal. um and like also, because ADHD, if it's not fun, I can't focus on it. So but it's a great reminder, right? Like every time I one of my favorite all-time series is Avatar: The Last Airbender, because they have a lot of cool things that I love, but I love that they discuss the concept of balance a lot,
Yeah.
because we need to have a balanced life, not only like a diet and exercise routine, but also like with our emotions. Like, are we making sure that we're socializing enough? Are we socializing too much? Like, we just need to be aware of all of those things, right? Like, are we focusing all of our energy into like our work, but like none of it into like our own mental health or whatever? Like, there needs to be that balance there. And then so every time I see the posters that have on my wall, I'm like, balance. I need to think about balance in my life, right? And then it's just like this great reminder of like, for me. So if you discuss sort of like your favorite character and how they're still really, really awesome, regardless of their allergy to I
Kryptonite.
I was gonna say plutonium, and I'm like, it's not to
That
kryptonite.
makes sense.
I think we would be allergic to plutonium. Like, they're still like really cool, right? So like every time I see an episode or I see a picture of it or whatever it is, I'm reminded of that. So it just, again, it makes therapy even more fun and personable for us. And we are totally over the time that we agree to do this, and I know you're both so busy, and thank you so much for being here on the weekend to talk about this. I know there's so much more we can discuss, and I would love to do that in another panel. So if you lovely ladies would like to join me again, I would love to have you back and include a couple more people in here so we can discuss more about this, because I think it's very, very important for us to do so. Um, if anybody is interested in reaching out to you, whether it's for a consultation or like, actual therapy in the case of Shirley, or like, wanting to work with your organization, April, where can they reach you?
Shirley?
So I'm going to give you a link, but I am at www.goodgrieffamilytherapy.com. I'll give you the link for my YouTube if somebody wants to watch me talk, Instagram. And if you reach through there and you're in Georgia, I'm licensed in Georgia and I will be there. And if you're not in Georgia, I will help you find someone who can support you.
It's awesome. All right. See, all the links and everything would be on the description of this video as well. So no need to like write this down. April?
So they can find Cause for Hope. It's COS, the number 4, hope.org. Go there. You can reach out on social media. We're on all of the major platforms. So send us a message, whatever you're comfortable with. And yeah, we look forward to everything with you guys.
I kind of like forgot to ask you earlier, but you guys do a lot of like really cool events, because every time like an event finishes and I see a picture of like everyone that participated, I was like, are you so far away?
So we have some awesome events. We've got our HopeCon. This is our super mini HopeCon. So it's a very small comic convention. And then we've got a lot of exhibitors who come, vendors, and we have mental health panels. My favorite thing that we do at our super mini is we have a story time with cosplayers. And so the cosplayers, last year we had Captain Jack Sparrow, who our dear friend Shane cosplayed as, and he read a book about pirates and their feelings. And so we blend those mental health with kiddos like as much as we can. And then we have our HopeCon and Walk. So the HopeCon and Walk it takes place at the university that I work at, and it's a Comic-Con, but it's outside, and the walk portion is a suicide prevention cosplay parade. And it's a blast. It's so much fun. I've got a friend who's close to San Diego who works with a national organization for suicide prevention. And he's actually invited cosplayers to his walk. And it goes over so well. They absolutely love it. And then we've got our lightsabers, lanterns, and lumos. And we have in person, and we also have a virtual option. And that's for International Suicide Loss Survivors Day, which takes place the weekend prior to Thanksgiving. It's been going on since International Suicide Loss Survivors Day has been going on since the 70s, I believe. And it's a way for us to acknowledge an individual who's died by suicide and represent that empty chair that's generally there for Thanksgiving and other holidays that come up. Porches On is our virtual suicide prevention that is unified. So it's virtual and it's about raising awareness, but also lighting torches so that people know that, hey, it's okay not to be okay. We're here for you. So we do a lot of online stuff. We also have some online support groups. We have our HopeCon, but we're very thankful to be here for quite a few years. So, and by the time the podcast comes out, our organization has won what we call Best of the Berg, which is Best of the Berg for Best Kept Secret, which is kind of cool. Best place to work for people who have under 25 employees, which we are entirely volunteer ran. So we thought it was hilarious that we won because we don't have any staff that's paid, which is awesome. Best volunteer organization and favorite charity nonprofit in our little bitty town. So doing a lot of awesome things. But I could go on for millions of years. I do want to thank both of you. Like Shirley, oh my gosh, I want to go to Georgia.
Come over.
I'll be like, we're going to Georgia, or actually Universal and Disney in March of next year, and we're literally driving straight through Georgia. So I was like, oh, I'm driving there.
Right
And
over there and come see me.
yes, oh girl, you'll be like, she won't leave. And Elizabeth, I've admired Psychology for Geeks for a long time. So thank you for the stuff that you're doing and doing these panels, because you are phenomenal. You're
Yes.
You know, I I had a friend who was like giving me a lots of amazing advice on how to continue growing my nonprofit. And she said like, hey, you know, those panels that you do, they're actually like something that you can do, like hide behind sort of like a paywall and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but that's gonna take a lot of time for me to figure out how to do that. And I want to geek out with people. Like I just want to do this, and I think it's fantastic because like in the previous panels that I've done, a lot of people get to meet each other, and then they're like, hey, now we can collaborate
Yes.
and you know, work together. And I just love that. I'm like, yes, yes, because there's just not enough, like, you know, geeky mental health providers are out there, but we're usually kind of like all over the place, and you know, everybody's like super busy, so we don't have a lot of time to figure out who we can collaborate with. But you know, if you meet someone at a panel, then you're like, hey, you're a great person, you're a great resource. Like now you have a connection in Georgia, in Missouri, like somewhere else, you know. So it's
Totally.
fantastic. I love doing this. Um, so once again, thank you so much for joining me. Again, all the
I'm
details
gonna
on how you
say
can
thank
reach.
you too. Because first of all, Elizabeth, what you're doing is amazing. You get people to talk
yes.
and they don't want to. Let's face it. And as a baby YouTube, you actually gave me hope because I'm like, you didn't start with a gazillion.
Mhm.
So that thanks for that. Because every time I want to drop it, I'm like, no, you have time. And April, at some point I'll get to Missouri. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know anything about the state, but
Listen, you have a con that you can go to now
I may
to
come for
advertise your
HopeCon.
services.
I may come for HopeCon because Hope is my friend. So as soon as I saw your cause for Hope, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get along with this person.
Yeah, I'm like, you can always do panels and stuff,
I
you
may
know,
come
for
over
you.
to HopeCon.
Like, hey
Yeah.
Shirley, hey Elizabeth, what's going on, girls?
Yes. That's one of the so Comic-Con for me is, I don't know when this video is coming out, but Comic-Con is just this next weekend for me. And I am making plans to meet all these other geeky therapists that I have worked with a ton before virtually, but I've never got to meet online. I mean, in person. So now I'm like, hey, Comic-Con, we're here together. Let's just like hang out and meet each other. And I get just sadly like, why is everybody like live in like the opposite side of the country as me? Like, I don't know why that's happening. But yes, I am so grateful for that you guys are here and sharing. Um, you know, one of the things that I realize being Mexican descent and sort of like diving more into sort of like what my culture is and what I appreciated about it is this idea of storytelling. Right, like I just love hearing other people's stories, and having a space to be able to share our stories is necessary. And so I'm like, yes, that's what Psychologies for Geeks is all about. Like, not only for you guys to discuss, you know, the things that you're very, very passionate about, that you're already discussing in your own channels, but I'm like, but other people need to know as well, you know. So I love helping that. And for everyone out there, don't forget to follow these lovely ladies. You can also check out Psychology for Geeks. We are Psych, the number 4 geeks. Subscribe to this channel because I will definitely have them back. If you have any questions for them, or any amazing things that you would like, or like an amazing idea of how you would like us to collaborate together, please write it down in the comments, and then we will try to make that happen, because we are we are very passionate about these things, and we would love to talk about it more. So thank you so much for making it to this very long video, and I hope you got some resources and some ideas on how to, you know, communicate with another person who is actively talking about suicide. So again, thank you so much, and don't forget to reframe and don't forget to reframe and re-enchant your life, and we'll see you on the next panel. Bye.